I hid in a closet during a school lockdown and heard what really happened. The truth is much worse than what they told us. I'm very happy I'm not in school anymore. I graduated a few years ago, but more and more every day I hear about incidents at school. On the news, on the internet, on texts, my friends send me all sorts of horror stories. But the stories online are the ones I'm always finding myself glancing through. I've seen stories online of people relating how their school went into lockdown, and the story ends up being about some hobo who had been living under the school, or some crazy person from down the street who finally snapped one day. I don't know if they're true, but all I know is our school went into lockdown once, and I don't know if even the people at my school know the whole story as to what happened. I don't even know if I understand it myself. It still seems like a sort of fever dream, something that didn't happen. It couldn't happen. It was the middle of third period, math. I had just finished a big test. I found out later I had made a bunch of mistakes and ended up getting a D, but that's not really important to the story. I used the hall pass to go use the bathroom. Unfortunately, the school bathrooms were all located at the stairwells, and of course, the bathrooms on the first floor, where I was, were closed for repairs. I had to go up to the second floor, but before I got there, the bell rang. The bell never rang during class before, but as it did, an announcement came over the PA. Students and faculty, we are entering lockdown. This is not a drill. Please, all students and faculty follow all school procedures. I froze. I could hear sirens approaching. I came out of the stairwell, but already the doors in the hallway were closing, and I could hear them locking. I was alone and out in the open. I could go into the bathroom now, but the doors had no locks on them since my freshman year, after some juniors trapped a freshman in the bathroom and duct taped him inside a stall. They removed the ability to lock them at all. If there was somebody wandering the school, I'd have no chance if I went into there. I ran down the hall. I could see classrooms turning out their lights and covering the windows. I couldn't turn to them for help. All the instructions said to not answer the door. I had to find someplace safe nearby before something happened. I turned a corner, and I saw my chance. The janitor's closet was open. Lunch was up next period, so he was probably out setting up tables when the announcement was made. He wasn't in there, and it could easily be locked from the inside, so I jumped in and shut off the light. The only light I saw was from the bottom of the door. I waited, and the sirens grew closer and eventually stopped. Time passed, and I wasn't sure if I was happy that I couldn't hear anything going on or tense, because I had no idea what was happening. Then I heard footsteps, lots of them. They stopped in the hallway. It must have been police. I could hear radios and other assorted noises. I didn't think it could be some sort of lone gunman or nutcase, so I listened. One guy in particular sounded like the one in charge. "Okay, are we in position?" Another guy answered. I didn't know what his rank was, but clearly he was not in charge of the first guy. "Yes, sir. We know the suspect is here in the building. C team is across the campus as ordered, and B team is covering the back entrances. He will not exit the building on our watch." The chief responded, "Pun good. Remember, he could look like anyone, but he must not escape. It's my fault he's here, and it's my duty to deal with him." I couldn't hear much for a while. There was too much movement, too many people all talking to each other to make out anybody from where I sat. I just waited for a little while. Maybe it would all just be over soon, and I could leave the closet and go back to class. Then, that's when it all happened. The chief yelled out, "Hold it! Put your hands in the air!" The commotion outside stopped abruptly. A moment later, clothes rustled loudly as what sounded like a large number of guns were drawn. "Lay down on the ground. Leave your hands where we can see them." It stayed quiet, except for a few of the guns cocking. Anai said down the ground, "Don't you dare try what I think you're going to do. You're not at the institute anymore." I thought I would hear shots go off back and forth and eventually somebody saying "suspect down." What I didn't expect was the scream. It wasn't a normal scream. It wasn't somebody crying out in terror. It was like a wounded animal, mixed with the sound of a bandsaw hitting concrete. I've never heard anything like it before, and I hope I never hear it again. Then the guns began to fire. The horrible scream happened again, and then other screams, and then the sounds of tearing. I saw the shadows under the door as people moved and fell over, and heard the telltale splatter of gore as it soaked the floor. There was another gunshot, and I nearly yelled out myself when a bullet punched through part of the doorway. It wasn't very big, but I put my eye up against it, and I could see a group of people being attacked by somebody. But something wasn't right about him. He looked too long in places, like he'd been stretched in a taffy machine. He was moving so fast, though, that I couldn't make anything out, except for him grabbing people and throwing them around like they were nothing. There was blood everywhere. More gunshots. The scream happened again and again. I pulled away from the bullet hole and sat back in the closet. Then the scream began to fade. I heard a thud and then more footsteps. The chief spoke again, but he was breathing heavily like he had been badly wounded. Team A, he's down. I repeat, he's down. We need a cleanup immediately. I didn't move. I wanted to look again, but as curious as I was, I didn't really want to see, but I heard a lot of commotion for a long time, and then nothing. I don't know how long it was after that, but then the PA announced the lockdown had ended. I came out of the closet. I tried not to look, but for all the sounds I had heard, there was not as much sign of a fight as I thought there would be. Even the blood I had seen in that brief time through the bullet hole had all been removed. I went back to my class and just told everyone I had hid in a stall in the bathroom. People were impressed with my guts for doing it. But if nobody else had heard that scream, I certainly didn't want to bring it up. As you might expect, we all went home early that day. Police and EMT were everywhere, but as far as I could see, nobody was being taken away by either. My parents came and were so happy that I was all right. They had been following everything on the news and came as soon as they could. At home that night, I ate dinner and waited to see what happened on the news. The live coverage had ended a long time ago, but when the news came back on at 10, I wanted to see everything. As it started, I saw classes had been canceled for the rest of the week, but then things started to get weird. The news talked about a student who they refused to name, how he had come to school armed but had been taken into custody after a short firefight. Stranger still, in the footage of the hallway where the scuffle had taken place, the door of the closest, which had been my refuge, was totally unscathed. Not so much as a scratch on it, let alone bullet holes. It appeared to have been replaced outright, well before any investigation could have been completed. I saw pictures of the student, being led away in cuffs. He didn't have a mark on him. He wasn't even wounded as he was pushed into a police car and driven away. All I saw was him fighting and yelling. Even in my glimpses through that bullet hole, I knew that wasn't the same one I saw. The clothes were completely different. The one I had seen had been wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. The one getting into the police car was wearing a white shirt and shorts. The news said no one had been hurt despite the gunfire. But I knew people had been wounded, even killed. I'd heard them screaming in agony as something vicious had attacked them. And then there was what that chief guy had said, talking about something being his fault. The institution. That Tahin Keen could look like anyone. I don't know what happened that day for certain. I didn't see enough. I didn't hear enough to get the full story. But this is what I can tell you. I know there was no shooter at our school. I know that someone was arrested that day. Someone who I didn't know, who I never heard about ever again. That's right, a Dutch shooter, who never made another day's worth of news, just disappeared. When was the last time that ever happened? I know that chief guy and his squads were not cops. I don't know who they were, but I know cops don't clean up a crime scene like that, and no human being has ever screamed like that. Ever. But whatever it was that I heard attacking those people, all I know is it came into that hallway where I was. I was alone, and if it hadn't been for that janitor's closet, I wouldn't have been safe. It could have looked like anyone. Something tells me that squad wouldn't have helped me either. It could have looked like anyone. What was it? How long had it been in our school? Had I ever been alone with it and never knew what it was? Who were those people who had come for it? Where had it come from? And good God, is it really dead? The letter from my son's school was chilling, but not as chilling as the basement. Dear Mr. Timkins, and I'm writing to you because I think it's important that we discuss Billy's recent behavior in class. I have tried contacting you over the phone on several occasions, but have been unsuccessful in getting through. I would appreciate it if you could get in touch with me to arrange a meeting at your earliest convenience. Let me start off by saying that Billy is a very bright young man. He's truly gifted across the board. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the boy has one of the most impressive scientific minds I've seen in years, especially when it comes to chemistry and biology. He may only be 11, but he has more knowledge in these areas than plenty of adults I know. Whatever work you've been doing with him outside the classroom, it's clearly paid off in that respect. I'm also conscious that the circumstances at home have not been easy for any of you recently. I'm aware that Billy's grandfather passed away a few months back. It must be a very difficult time, so please do accept my sincere condolences, and know that I wouldn't be contacting you if I didn't deem the matter an urgent one. As long as I've known him, Billy has kept to himself. He's always been one of those children who are just as happy, if not happier, in their own company. Eating by himself at lunchtime, playing on his own, he's always struck me as something of a shy boy, and he has never struck me up until the past few weeks as a violent one. But recently there have been causes for concern. 3 incidents in particular that I wanted to address with you. We can discuss these in more detail when you come in, but I've outlined them below so you understand the seriousness of the situation. The first incident took place a couple of weeks ago. Billy had a falling out with another boy in the playground. I don't know what the disagreement was about, and neither boy will tell me. But another little girl was playing nearby, and she tells me she heard your son say to the other young man, "If you don't back off, my granddad will get you. He knows how to do magic. He can make you disappear." Those exact words. Now, I'm aware that these are very difficult circumstances. Billy is almost certainly still grieving for his grandfather, and I know grief can often present itself in unusual ways. But despite this, I cannot completely excuse Billy. I'm told the other boy was quite distressed, and we cannot tolerate threatening language like that in our school. Since a second incident took place last week, I was having a chat with Billy after class because he wanted to talk through his maths homework with me, make sure he understood it. As you can probably imagine, this isn't a common occurrence with the children in my class, so I was more than happy to help. But as he was reaching into his rucksack to get his textbook, a tin fell out. Not the pencil case he always has on his desk, but a plain red tin I hadn't seen before. When it fell out of his rucksack, it landed on the ground and broke open. There were insects inside it, dead, dismembered insects, flies with their wings removed, a chopped-up worm, a spider with half its legs pulled off which still seemed to be alive and tried crawling away across the carpet. The only other thing in the tin besides the insects was a small pair of tweezers. Now, I want you to know Billy gave me an explanation for all this. He told me the bugs were part of an experiment. He said he'd been trying to teach himself about anatomy, so he'd been collecting some insects to dissect. I asked him why the spider was still alive if that was the case, but he told me he thought it had been dead when he was out operating on it. Said it must have gone into shock. If I'm honest, I'm not sure what to believe. As I'm sure you can appreciate, I found the whole thing rather disturbing, and it's even more troubling in light of the final matter I wanted to discuss with you. This last incident took place yesterday. It involved another little girl in Billy's class called Annabelle. Mrs. Herbert, our teaching assistant, was the one who found them. Billy and Annabelle were in a far corner of the school field during lunch, behind some bushes. Mrs. Herbert was patrolling the area, she told me, when she heard screams. She went to investigate, and when she walked around those bushes, she found Billy standing over the little girl. Annabelle had tears running down her face. Mrs. Herbert said she had her arms raised over her head, as if to defend herself, and in Billy's hand was a pair of silver tweezers, the same pair I'd seen fall out of his bag last week. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you here, Mr. Timkins. When Mrs. Herbert told me this, I wanted to suspend Billy on the spot. I wanted him gone. Our school has a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to bullying. But the problem is, Mrs. Herbert didn't actually see a son do anything to the girl, and both children insist that they were only playing. I spoke to them both separately, and they had the same exact story. They were playing at being doctors, and Billy was pretending to operate on Annabelle. When I asked her why she'd been crying if that was the case, she clammed up, wouldn't say anything else to me at all, and did notice that she had a red patch on the back of her head, however. A bald spot that had begun to scab over. If I had to guess, Mr. Timkins, I'd say your son was using those tweezers to pull the hairs out of her scalp. And the only other bit of information I have is something Mrs. Herbert told me, something the girl apparently said shortly after Mrs. Herbert found them both, something she let slip while she was still upset. And Mrs. Herbert was comforting her, telling the girl she could tell her anything she wanted, and Annabelle turned to her and said, I can't say anything bad about Billy, Mrs. Herbert, or he'll make it worse. His granddad's a ghost. He'll come through my window and get me while I'm sleeping. Again, that's a direct quote. Mrs. Herbert tried to get more out of her, but she wouldn't say anything else. Anyway, I apologize for the long letter, Mr. Timkins. I know the past few months can't have been easy. I'm also aware that the change in Billy's behavior is very likely linked to his recent bereavement, especially given what the other children have said about his grandfather. I'm sure you can see now why it's crucial that we speak as soon as possible. The school wants to support Billy as much as we can, but in the meantime, we simply cannot have him threatening or hurting other students. I do hope you'll contact me on the number below as soon as you receive this, so we can arrange an appointment and get to the bottom of the matter. Yours sincerely, Mr. Hartford, Pet of Year 6 Vent. Just as I finished reading that letter, I heard the front door of the house snick shut. I glanced at my watch. Billy. It was Billy, home from school. The letter had left me feeling very anxious, so I decided to waste no time. I marched to the front of the house, planning to confront him straight away. Billy was unslinging his rucksack when I entered the hallway. He glanced up at me and I saw his eyes widen when he noticed the look on my face. I thrust the letter in front of him. "Oh, I just got this from your teacher, Mr. Hartford," I said. "I want you to read it, and then I want you to explain yourself." "Oh," Billy stared down at the letter. A lock of black hair from his fringe had fallen in front of his eyes, and he swept it aside with a shaking hand. The shaking only got worse as he read what his teacher had written. "Well?" I demanded a few minutes later. Billy looked at the ground, refusing to meet my eyes. He didn't say anything. "Right," I said. "Might come with me." I took Billy's arm and led him through the house, chastising him as I went. "Now, the thing you need to understand, young man, is that when you act out at school, it doesn't just affect you." We were walking through the dining room now, en route to a little hallway at the back of the house. And it risks affecting our entire family. We entered the hallway and paused beside a closed door. I stared at Billy, who was looking up at me with frightened eyes. "Well, what do you have to say for yourself?" Despite the fear in his face, Billy met my gaze. I'm sorry, Dad," he spluttered. "I'm really sorry. I saw that his eyes had started glistening with tears. In that moment, he didn't look violent or capable of hurting anyone. He looked like a little boy. And just like that, I knew I couldn't be angry with him. Tensing my whole body, I pulled open the door we were standing beside, the door to the basement. All at once, the hallway was filled with the sound of high-pitched screams. The noise made me feel ill. I found myself reflecting almost absently what an efficient job the builders did with the soundproofing down there. Really thorough. I told them at the time Billy would be using the room to practice his drumming. Said we didn't want any noise whatsoever to escape. They obviously listened. "Oh, look, Billy," I said. "I know how much you miss your granddad, and you know what a special man he was, don't you?" Billy nodded. "And you know that the special instructions he left for us have to be followed very carefully, right?" Billy nodded again. "I know, Dad," he said. "That's why I've been doing my best to practice. 'Cause I want to help." He stared up at me with a bright-eyed excitement. It did nothing to help the nausea in my stomach. Billy's only a kid. He's only young. Involving him in all this was the last thing I ever wanted to do. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes the alternatives are worse. The old man was very clear in the instructions he left behind. If the whole family isn't in on it, it won't work. And if the whole family doesn't try and make it work, he'll know. Oh yes, he always knows. The first time I went down to the basement, I left Billy behind. Thought it wouldn't matter. But that night, Canteen came to me while I slept. Visited me. I dreamed I was trapped in bed with my arms pinned at my sides, and he was looming over me, watching. He didn't say anything, just pointed a finger at the photo of Billy on my beside table. The message was clear enough. If you don't do exactly what I ask, it won't be you that suffers, it'll be your son. Now I reached down and ruffled Billy's hair with a trembling hand. In the basement below us, the screams grew louder. "I know you only want to help," I whispered. "I know you want to see your grandpa again. But part of helping is making sure we keep what we're doing here a secret too. Do you understand that?" Billy looked down at the floor and nodded for a third time, shoulders slumped. Right then, I didn't know what was worse, the fact that I had no choice but to involve him, or the fact he seemed to want to be involved. The fact that sometimes, when he looked at me in a certain light, I saw traces of his granddad in him. "I'll tell you what," I said after a moment. "If you promise me you'll start behaving in school, I'll let you choose the best parts on this one. How does that sound? You're still a bit too little to help with the operation, but that doesn't mean you can't be useful." Billy stared up at me with wide eyes. "Really, Dad? You sure?" I nodded at him, forced myself to smile, felt the nausea in my stomach roll and churn. Billy's a good kid. I know, he's a good kid. All I really want to do is protect him. I spent the last 11 years of my life trying to do just that, and 3 months ago I thought I'd succeeded. 3 months ago, when his grandpa had a heart attack, I thought the nightmare was finally over. But then I found the instructions he'd left behind for us. I started seeing him in my nightmares, and I realized it wasn't really over after all. Now I watched as Billy ran over to the top of the basement steps. He paused and grinned back at me. "I know 2 kids in my class who lost their granddads as well," he said suddenly. "And they're both sad because they'll never get to see them again. But I'm not sad, Dad. I'm lucky. We both are." He turned and ran down the steps. I followed after him, shut the door firmly behind us. The screams were louder than ever now, and Billy's next words, which echoed back to me up the staircase, were almost lost in the noise. "Only a couple more bits and pieces to go now," he shouted. "And I'll have a brand new granddad. My entire school just got emailed a suicide note. Right now I'm studying for a test I have tomorrow morning. And as I was studying, I got a notification from my school email about a new message in my inbox. I opened it up to find that it was not only from an unknown email that wasn't even attached to the school, but also that it was sent to the entire school. All of the students, faculty, administrators, even the parents were sent this message. This alone creeped me out, which only made me more interested in what was typed. So I started reading. This is what it said. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. For the longest time I've been lying to you all. I've been putting on a mask every day to school, pretending to be someone else, someone better than who I truly am. In truth, I am a nobody. I have no identity, I have no name, I have no family, I have nothing. I only have this email to leave behind to everyone. I can't sleep at night anymore. It's been keeping me up night after night, fantasizing about this moment, thinking, dreaming, hoping for a day like this to come. And alas, I've been blessed with a reason, a glorious reason to leave this place and never return. I've been telling myself that this moment is the only thing I have to look forward to in my damp, empty, miserable life. I've been suffering in silence for so long, waiting and praying that this fantasy in my mind would come true, and now it has, and I wanted to apologize to you all for it. I want to apologize for any of the stress and anger I have caused everyone around me, although I won't be here to receive your acceptance or denials for these apologies. To my friends, I am sorry. I am sorry for always coming to you when I was at my lowest points. I inconvenienced you and I pushed all my worries onto you when you should have pushed all of yours onto me. At least now you won't be bothered by my presence again. To my teachers, I am sorry. I am sorry for my erratic behavior in class. I can't help it. It swallowed up my true self, dragged it down into the deepest parts of my mind, so much that now I'm an empty, irritable shell of a person, if that's what you'd call me. I hope now you will be at peace, not having to deal with the stupidity and arrogance I've displayed in your classes. I hope they'll be so much better without me. To my parents, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a failure. I'm sorry for not living up to your expectations, not like there were any for me. You brought me into this world, a failure, and now I will leave this world, still a failure. I truly wish the best for you, and the worst for me. I love you. Now I apologize to all of you reading this. I'm sorry for wasting your valuable time. I have no time left, so I'll end my long rambling here. I wish I could see all the smiles you all are getting by reading this. I wish I could see the party you'll all throw once I'm dead, dancing to the chant, "He's dead! Hallelujah!" just like how I imagined it. You all must be so glad to see me write my last words. I know I am. Once again, I'm deeply sorry for my existence and for being a piece of waste to humanity. I wish I could have done more, however. My life was over once it started. Thank you, and I'm sorry. Sincerely, Jason Everfield. I'm so confused. Why did it have a my name on it? I never wrote anything like that. I've been spending the last hour studying for a test. I didn't write that. I don't know if this is just a prank or some kind of sick joke. Should I be scared? Should I run? Should I blow it off? I don't know what to do. Hold on, someone's banging on my window.